Hello friends. In today's lecture, we will try to discuss that what type of network is being considered by the bank for buying and selling of foreign currency. Basically, the communication network which is used by the bank for buying and selling of foreign currency has to be discussed today. Along with the communication network, we will also try to discuss the types of transactions which take place as well as exchange margin, what we mean by exchange margin, and why the exchange margin and at what rate the exchange margin is being considered by the bank for every transaction which is taking place with respect to foreign currency.
So, in the last lecture, we have discussed about the various basic introduction about foreign exchange market. We discussed about the geographical location, about the size, about the currencies, about the hours of trading. We discussed about the various participants of the foreign exchange market. We also discussed about the various users of foreign exchange market. Now we will try to have an overview that what mode, what channels are being considered for settling the transaction in foreign exchange market. And as we have discussed number of times that in foreign exchange market, buying and selling of foreign currency, but when the buying and selling of currency will take place automatically, there should be a medium, there should be a mode, because we already said that there is no physical existence of this market. This market is having its existence through internet, through satellite, we can say. That means internet connectivity becomes the basic mode or channel through which the communication is being transacted and settlement will be taken place. That means we have the requirement of electronic channel so that we can have the smooth communication between the buyer and the seller of foreign currency, and the settlement could be taken up. So with this regard, the system which is being used, or we can say the bank uses an exclusive network. That means the general internet services that you are having, that is not being used for transaction of foreign currency, because it is having number of flaw, cyber crimes, fraud could take place. So for the proper communication and settlement of foreign exchange deals and transactions, banks play a major role. That is why bank use a exclusive network, and this network is known as SWIFT, SWIFT, Maruti Swift, as you can say, not the Maruti, but it is the same SWIFT, SWIFT. This network is used to communicate the message and settle the transaction at the electronic clearance house. As you are also aware when we draw a check in favor of any other person having an account in the same bank or the other bank, then there is always the requirement of a clearing house. That means all the bank people will meet under a shed, and that shed will be known as the clearing house, and whatever the check which are drawn on various banks, that will be settled in the clearing house, and the debit and the credit account of the bank will be properly settled. That means always there is a help, or with the help of clearing house only, the settlement of checks are being done by the various commercial bank. In the same way, when the buying and selling of foreign currency transaction has to be settled, then banks make use of a exclusive network for communication, and that network is known as SWIFT. And with the help of this network, they are able to communicate the information about the buying and selling of the transaction to the electronic clearing house. Electronic clearing house, which are known as CHIPS, CHIPS, at New York. I will tell you later. So first of all, means here we can say we are supposed to discuss about two things for settlement of transaction in foreign exchange. Number one, the mode, the network used for communication, and number two, electronic clearing house. With the help of these two, the commercial banks, they are able to settle the deal in their respective countries. So first of all, I will take about the discussion about the SWIFT, SWIFT. It is known as Society for Worldwide, Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Transaction. That I repeat, Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, sorry, SWIFT. S means SWIFT for worldwide, WRLD, next is interbank, next is financial, and next is telecommunication. This was found or established in the year 1973, and if I am not wrong, approximately 250 banks of more than 15 countries, 250 bank, more than 15 countries, they came together for establishment of SWIFT. It was introduced, SWIFT was introduced for providing safe and secured computer network which can be transmitted throughout the world for the settlement of foreign currency. Or you can say this system is going to carry the communication related to buying and selling of foreign currency globally. Again, I repeat, approximately 250 countries initiated for the establishment or for the making of SWIFT, so that the proper and secured communication can be there globally for buying and selling of foreign currency. That means the main purpose is that they are supposed to transmit the message across the network, and this message will be having a standard format. Encoding and decoding will be there. Right? Then I said we will take up about the electronic clearing house. So let me tell you that there are basically two clearing houses which are operating in the international market. One is known as CHIPS, CHIPS, and one is known as CHAPS, CHAPS. I give the full form. CHIPS means Clearing House Interbank Payment System. I repeat, Clearing House Interbank Payment System. And CHAPS means Clearing House Automatic Payment System. As the A is there, A is used for automated, and there I is there which is used for interbank. The only difference is that both are operating as electronic clearing house. CHIPS is located in New York and CHAPS is being used by the British company, which is used for facilitating the transferring of European currencies. That means CHIPS, which is located at New York, is being used internationally by all the countries and for all the currencies. Whereas CHAPS is a British company, and that basically help for facilitating the transaction which take place in the European country, European currency. That means CHAPS will be used for transferring for currencies like euro and sterling. Now, so this was regarding the mode, the channel, the method, the tool, the technique that we can say, where we have discussed about the network and as well as we have discussed the clearinghouse. The next thing which is important with respect to foreign currency, see, this is all the basic that we are doing. Once the basic introductory part is over, then only we can engage ourselves in knowing that what equation that we are supposed to follow for converting the value of one currency into another. So basic concept, although it is theoretical, but it is having the application as practical only. Next question arises that what are the various types of transactions which are taken place in foreign exchange market. So simply types of transactions we can say two type of transactions: buying and number second is selling. You can say purchase transaction or you can say a sale transaction. Like in India, a customer can be interested in buying the foreign currency. So if customer has to buy the foreign currency, he has to approach the bank and he has to ask the bank that he wish to buy a foreign currency and he has to name that foreign currency. The bank will quote the rate of selling. Always remember, the customer wish to buy, but the bank is going to quote the selling rate because bank is selling the foreign currency. And if the customer wish to purchase the foreign currency, then again he has to approach the commercial bank and the bank has to quote the buying rate for the foreign currency. Try to mind what I am saying, that basically the rate is being quoted by the bank, and the bank is going to quote the reverse. Bank is going to quote the reverse transaction to the customer. Customer want to sell, but the bank is quoting the buying. Customer want to purchase, but the bank is quoting to sell. Because the customer in India want to buy foreign currency or sell foreign currency. And if, for example, if I take the foreign currency as USD, and USD is having more value as compared to Indian rupee, so automatically the currency which is precious, which is stronger, which is more economically valuable, the rate will be quoted in terms of that currency only. Because as the bank is holding the higher value currency against the currency which is being holded by the customer, the bank will quote the rate. So again I say that basically and majorly in foreign exchange market, either the transaction will be of buying the foreign currency or the transaction will be of selling the foreign currency, and in both the mode, both the transaction, bank will be one party. Bank will be one party, as I told you earlier. Another party can be another bank, or it can be a customer to the bank also. Now, when we say that the transactions are buying or selling, then again I will try to discuss that what type of buying or selling used to take place. You can say as the types of buying and selling transactions. Earlier I told you that types of transactions which are taken place in foreign exchange market, and they are buying and selling, and now I am saying types of buying and selling transactions. So basically we say there are three types of transaction majorly. Number one, cash transaction. Which is also called as ready rate. Ready, R-E-A-D-Y. Number two, spot transaction. Spot, S-P-O-T. And number three, forward transaction. So there are three types of buying or selling transaction. Number one, I am saying cash transaction. Number two, I am saying forward transaction, spot transaction. And number third, I am saying forward transaction. And in all the three transaction, there will be three types of rate: ready rate, spot rate, and forward rate. Ready rate will be there in cash transaction. Spot rate will be there in the spot transaction, and forward rate will be there in forward transaction. Now I try to clear that what is the difference between the three. Listen very carefully, it is very important because it is going to help you in long run in understanding the other terminologies also. See, when a customer wish to buy a foreign currency today, when a customer wish to buy a foreign currency today, he will approach the commercial bank. He will approach the commercial bank and he will disclose his wish of buying the foreign currency. Commercial bank will approach the international market, the foreign exchange market, where the wished foreign currency rate will be available. And that rate he will try to quote to the customer. Again, I repeat, customer approached the bank for buying the foreign currency and bank quote the rate for selling the foreign currency. And if the transaction take place immediately, the rate quoted, the transaction take place immediately at the rate quoted by the bank, then that type of transaction is known as cash transaction. And the rate is ready rate because there is no risk, there is no fluctuation. The rate quoted by the bank is being accepted by the customer and the transaction is executed and the settlement is done. Such type of transaction will be cash transaction and the rate available in such transaction will be known as ready rate. Now I speak about the second, spot. When deal is executed, deal with respect to buying or selling of foreign currency is executed today, but settlement will take place after 2 days. But settlement take place after 2 days. Such transactions are known as spot transactions. And the rate quoted is known as the spot rate. That means if there will be a delay of 2 days, the 2 days you can say the bank is not having the rate available. The bank is not having the rate available. The bank has to approach the other market. The bank has to approach the other bank. The bank has to approach the other market for knowing the rate of the foreign currency. Then the customer, then the rate will be disclosed to the customer. Customer may give a thought and then he can approach the bank and he can show his interest in buying or selling of foreign currency. Bank execute the transaction. Some paperwork may be there and it may require 2 days minimum. So as the risk will be involved in between. So whatever the rate which the bank is going, means today is 31st May. So deal is executed today, but the settlement is not taking place today. It will be taking place after 2 days. So you should clearly get this. The deal is executed today. The rate quoted by the bank will be only the rate available after 2 days. So such transactions will be known as spot transaction. That means there is a possibility that after 2 days the rate may change. The rate may change. It may be beneficial or adverse to the bank. It may be beneficial or adverse to the bank. That is why the rate quoted by the bank to be executed after 2 days, the bank has considered that risk involved in that. What I mean to say, suppose today rate is rupees 50 per dollar and bank expect that after 2 days the rate will become as 51. So in consideration, the risk will be of rupee 1 in between. The bank is not going to quote rupees 50 to the customer. The bank is going to quote rupee 51 to the customer as the deal will be executed after 2 days. So the period of the risk is of 2 days. So that risk period will be considered while quoting the rate to the customer. And number third, I said about forward transaction. Deal executed today. Deal executed today, but settlement take place on any future date will be forward transaction. Future date means it can be after 4 days, after 5 days, after a week, after a month, after 2 months, after 3 months, after 4 months, any day we can say, which has been promised. So in this way, we are trying to say that deal executed today, but settlement going to take place in future date, that will be known as forward transaction, and the rate quoted by the bank to the customer for buying or selling of the foreign currency, whatever the deal may be, next thing it will be known as forward rate. You are supposed to understand is regarding the exchange margin. One more important aspect which will help you in converting the foreign currency into another currency. As I said, and you are aware also, banks are basically a mediator between the buyer and the seller of foreign currency. They are providing electronic communication mode as well as electronic a clearing house. Moreover, they are also having the accountability and responsibility to provide the secured transaction between the buyer and seller. For this purpose, they are pooling huge amount of investment for getting a proper settlement of foreign exchange. That means if a wrong deal has been executed, then the losses may be faced by the bank. The credibility of the bank may be at stake. And moreover, the bank is having the full-fledged secured structure in terms of electronic, fixed, as well as manpower. That means the expenditure is being incurred by the bank. So what we can say in nutshell, for providing the smooth transaction of foreign currency, bank is incurring some cost, number one. Number two, bank is also taking the risk that if there is fluctuation in the exchange rate, then quite possible the rate quoted by the bank may be adverse to the bank. So that risk is there. And number three, bank is a company. Bank is a company operating for profit. So they need profit for every transaction. As we have discussed, that the bank is being involved in between the buyer and seller, and they are incurring making the availability of high-tech and secured communication network, which is going to incur some cost. They are also bearing the risk that if the rate quoted by the customer and before the maturity, before the transaction, the rate may become adverse to the bank rate. Then the bank may face the loss. The bank is having the risk. And thirdly, bank is a business company, so want to generate a specific amount of profit also. So all these three, that means the cost incurred, the premium against the risk, and the profit margin, they will be clubbed together and they will derive exchange margin. That means every buying or selling transaction, is going to involve exchange margin also. An exchange margin will be a rate which will consider the profit margin, premium for risk, and the cost incurred. And this exchange margin rate will be over and above the rate quoted to the bank, to the customer. That means when a customer approaches the bank for buying of foreign currency, bank will find out the selling rate. The bank will find out the selling rate of foreign currency. Then on that selling rate, exchange margin will be loaded. Exchange margin will be loaded. And after loading the exchange margin, then a new rate will be quoted to the customer. And this new rate will be called as the buying or selling rate. So you can say that exchange margin could be considered as the fees or commission which is charged by the bank on every buying and selling of foreign currency. For every buying and selling of foreign currency, and this exchange margin will consider the profit margin, premium against the risk, and the cost incurred by the bank. So today we discussed about the electronic system which is being used for settling the foreign transactions, foreign exchange transaction. Then we also discussed about the types of transactions, and we also discussed the concept of exchange margin. I hope you got whatever that we have discussed just now.
So at the end, I hope you must have understand about the strong communication network which is being used by the bank for buying and selling of foreign currency. And we have also discussed about the various types of transactions which are taking place in foreign exchange market. And along with that, we have also discussed that what we mean by exchange margin and how the exchange margin is being calculated. Thank you.